In a quiet American town, a man kissed his children goodnight and was dead before sunrise. The family called it self-defense. The evidence told a different story. He was a father, a husband, an Irishman chasing a second chance at happiness. She was the woman hired to help raise his children until she became his wife. But what really happened behind the walls of that picture-perfect home? A bat, a brick, a bedroom soaked in blood. Was it rage or was it fear? And why, in the end, did the children, the only silent witnesses, change everything? This isn't just a murder case. It's a web of loyalty, lies and love turned lethal. This is the story of Jason Corbett. Welcome to Unveiled Crime Mysteries channel, where I unveil mysterious true crimes, some lost to time, others fresh in memory. Justice might not be served, but the shadow is unveiled. It looked like something out of a storybook. In the small town of Walberg, North Carolina, a widowed Irish father found love again, this time with an American au pair. But behind the smiling photos and quiet suburban streets, a far darker story was taking shape. Jason Corbett, a father of two from Limerick, seemed to have rebuilt his life. New country, new wife, happy kids, and a second shot at love with Molly Martins. But just after 3 a.m. on a warm August morning in 2015, that dream ended in blood. Jason was found bludgeoned to death in his own bedroom. His wife and her father, Tom Martins, a retired FBI agent, claimed it was self-defense. What followed was a courtroom showdown that spanned the Atlantic, turning a private family tragedy into an international legal storm. Beneath the surface of this so-called love story were cracks, jealousy, power, fear, and at the end of it all, a man lay dead. It began in Ireland with heartbreak. Jason's first wife, Margaret, died suddenly from an asthma attack. He was left alone to raise their two children, Jack, just 3, and baby Sarah. Needing help, he hired a young American au pair named Molly Martins. She came from Knoxville, Tennessee. What began as childcare soon became something more. A relationship took root. Emotions deepened. By 2011, they'd packed up everything and moved to Davidson County, North Carolina. Jason took a job managing a packaging plant. That same year, he and Molly got married. On the outside, it looked like a happy new beginning, steady work, a nice home, a new chapter. But inside the house, things weren't what they seemed. Molly allegedly wanted to adopt Jason's children, a move some believed was less about motherhood and more about securing their U.S. citizenship. Jason didn't agree. He had no plans to stay in America. He wanted to go back home to Spanish Point, County Clare, and open a pizza shop. Instead of adoption, he sorted the children's immigration status himself, avoiding any legal ties to Molly or her family. That decision, his brother John said, caused tension, deep, ongoing tension. At first, Jason's family welcomed Molly, but over time, things began to change. His sister Tracy described Molly as someone who lived in fantasy. She'd claimed to be an Olympic swimmer, a trained Montessori teacher, even a foster mum. Tracy also said Molly had admitted to being bipolar and having a history of self-harm. There were other troubling signs. Drinking during the day, driving the children while under the influence. Before the wedding, more revelations came to light. Molly had apparently told people she was pen pals with Jason's late wife, a lie. And worse, Tracy learned that Molly had just come out of a psychiatric facility before meeting Jason, something she only revealed just before they married. Molly allegedly told neighbors that Sarah was her own biological daughter, even describing a fake labor story at Bible study. She reportedly told the children, "Jason killed your mother." Sarah would later repeat those very words. There were more disturbing claims, forcing Jack's face under running water as punishment, snapping when the children reminded others she wasn't their real mum. Friends said Molly once shouted at guests over a dinner dispute. Another recalled Jason quietly leaving a party after Molly mocked him about his weight. Tracy believed that moment might have been the breaking point. Jason had made his decision. He was moving back to Ireland without Molly. Then in the early hours of 2 August, a 911 call shattered the silence. Tom Martins was on the line. His voice was unsteady, panicked. He told the dispatcher there'd been a serious fight between Jason and Molly. Things had spiraled. He said he had to step in. Jason, he said, was badly hurt. There was a lot of blood. He wasn't sure if Jason was still alive. The peace of that North Carolina night was over. Within minutes, The family's quiet home had turned into a crime scene. Tom was told to begin CPR. He and Molly took turns, following the operator's instructions, but by the time paramedics arrived, Jason was gone. His body lay on the master bedroom floor. The injuries to the back of his head were brutal, so severe that medics knew straight away he couldn't be revived. Blood was everywhere, on the walls, the floor, the furniture, the body. Police knew instantly this wasn't just some family row gone wrong, this was something else. In that same bedroom, they found two potential weapons: a brick landscaping paver, stained with blood, near a toppled lamp, and nearby, leaning against a dresser, a Louisville Slugger baseball bat, just 28 inches long, under 500 grams. Both stained, both chilling. But who struck first? Officers checked the rest of the house. The children, Jack and Sarah, were still asleep, completely unaware of what had happened just down the hall. Later that day, Molly told her version of events. She said it all began with a nightmare. Sarah had woken up scared, thinking the fairies on her bedspread had turned into bugs and lizards. She ran to her parents' room. Jason, annoyed, allegedly flew into a rage. He shouted. Then Molly claimed he grabbed her by the neck, choked her. Just hours before, Tom and his wife Sharon had arrived from Tennessee for a quiet visit. By the next morning, everything had changed. Tom told police he heard shouting from upstairs. He got up, went to their room. What he found sparked a chain of events that would lead straight into the courtroom and into headlines on both sides of the ocean. Tom said when he burst into the bedroom, he saw Jason with both hands around Molly's neck, strangling her. What happened next, he claimed, was chaos. A fight broke out, and by the time it ended, Jason Corbett was dead on the floor. As detectives dug in, the full weight of the law came crashing down. Tom and Molly Martins were both arrested. They were charged with second-degree murder and voluntary manslaughter. They denied it all. The case went to trial. The jury was handed one chilling question: was Jason attacked while sleeping, or did a violent argument spiral out of control? The prosecution didn't flinch. They said Jason showed no signs of stress or conflict in the hours before he died. No outbursts, no warnings. They argued that the attack only came after Jason made his intentions clear. He was taking his kids and moving back to Ireland. Without Molly, they said he never stood a chance, that he was struck in his sleep, and that the 911 call came after Tom and Molly had agreed on what to say. The final evening of Jason's life couldn't have seemed more normal. It began with small talk and takeaway pizza. Around 8:30 p.m., Tom and Sharon Martins arrived at the Corbett home. Jason was outside chatting with a neighbor. He smiled, helped with their luggage, carried their bags inside. That night, Jason, Molly, Tom, Sharon, and young Sarah sat down for dinner, pizza boxes on the table. Jack, Jason's teenage son, was at a friend's party and didn't come home until around 11. The prosecution called David Fritcher to the stand. He lived nearby. He'd spent most of that Saturday afternoon with Jason. They had a few beers in the garden, laughed, relaxed. From 3:30 until the Martins arrived, David said Jason was his usual self, calm, cheerful, completely normal. Even when the in-laws pulled up, nothing changed. Jason welcomed them warmly. No tension, no signs of a fight coming. That moment, David's testimony became one of the cornerstones of the prosecution's case. Nothing that night pointed to violence. It came suddenly, without warning. Then the courtroom turned quiet. The prosecution turned to the forensics. And what followed shocked everyone. They said Tom Martins delivered the fatal blows, struck Jason in the head with a baseball bat. Molly admitted she'd also hit Jason with a heavy object, and experts confirmed she'd made contact. The wounds told their own story. Jason's injuries were extensive. The evidence inside the house matched the brutality. Paramedic Amanda Hackworth took the stand. She said Jason's body was cold to the touch. His injuries were visible, severe. She said she even asked a colleague how long it had taken the Martins to call for help. They claimed it was immediate. The evidence said otherwise. Next, Sergeant Barry Alphen gave his account. He found a major head wound. It stopped the courtroom cold. Paramedic David Bent followed. He confirmed Jason was covered in blood. He saw Molly trying chest compressions, but said they were ineffective, and by then it was far too late. The prosecution didn't hold back. This, they said, wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was deliberate, calculated, prolonged. Then came the medical examiner, Dr. Craig Nelson, Associate Chief Medical Examiner. He'd performed the autopsy himself. His words were brutal. He told the jury Jason's death wasn't an accident. It was homicide.
death by catastrophic blunt force trauma. Jason had been struck at least 10 times, possibly more. 2 of the blows had landed on the exact same spots. Again and again, he had gaping wounds at the back of his skull. One section of bone, nearly triangular, was completely missing. Dr. Nelson said some of the strikes were strong enough to knock Jason out instantly, but the most horrifying detail, one of those blows came after Jason was already dead. Toxicology showed hardly any alcohol in Jason's body, just 0.02%. There was also trazodone, an antidepressant that's often used as a sedative. No other substances, no signs of intoxication, no drugs that could explain aggression, just cold clinical evidence of a savage attack. Then the court turned to the trazodone. Pharmacologist Dr. Russell Patterson explained it clearly. Trazodone isn't often prescribed for depression anymore. It's mostly used to help people sleep. The sedative effects are strong.
This changed the timeline. Jason had never been prescribed the drug. Molly had. Just 2 days before Jason died, she filled the prescription on July 30th. Jason, however, had visited the same clinic 2 weeks before, not for sleep. He said he felt dizzy, stressed, angry, but he didn't know why. That visit now hung heavy over the case. The drug in his body didn't come from his doctor, so how did it get there? Lieutenant Frank Young was next to testify. He photographed Molly and Tom's injuries, or lack of them. He noticed something odd straight away. Molly kept pulling at her neck, so much so he had to ask her to stop. Despite her claim that Jason had choked her, Young said there were no marks on her neck, just dried blood on her cheek, a bit tangled in her hair. Tom Martins had no injuries at all, but there was blood on his shirt, his watch, tiny spots under his nails, but his glasses, not a scratch. Then came Deputy Dillard's report. He described Molly sitting outside in shock, curled beside his vehicle, making crying sounds, but not shedding actual tears. She rubbed her neck over and over. Paramedics arrived. They saw some redness, a bit of soreness, but no real injuries on Molly or Tom. Later that same day, Molly wrote her version of what happened. She said Jason lost his temper after being woken by Sarah's nightmare. She wrote that he told her to be quiet and began to choke her, first with his hands, then with his arm. She screamed, she said. Jason covered her mouth, kept choking. Then she claimed her dad rushed into the room. She couldn't remember if he yelled or struck Jason first. It was chaos. Jason, she said, got hold of the bat. In a panic, she grabbed a brick from her nightstand and swung. After that, her memory went blank, but the forensic evidence would soon contradict that version. Bloodstain analyst Stuart James gave the jury a different picture. He said Jason had already started to collapse when more blows were delivered. He said the violence was close range, sustained, the kind that didn't stop even after the victim was on the ground. DNA found on Tom's clothes confirmed he'd been close during the final blows. Stains on his shorts, his shirt, blood on Molly's pajamas too, both top and bottoms. She had been there, right in it. The brick, covered in biological material. So was the bat. Both had been used. As the trial moved toward its final hours, a deeper story emerged. Mental health, custody disputes, family conflict, and forensic evidence that timed the blows. Molly had wanted to adopt Jason's children. Badly. Jason had said no. In closing, the prosecution laid out their case with precision. They said Tom and Molly waited. They delayed calling 911. They used those few minutes, not to save Jason, but to craft a story they could live with. The paramedic had said Jason's body felt cold when they arrived. The prosecution clung to that. It pointed, they argued, to a delay. Time lost. Time they believed was used to craft a version of events. The defense painted a different picture. They said Tom and Molly were innocent, that what happened was not murder, but a father protecting his daughter in the face of real danger, that Jason died during a lawful attempt to save a life. Still, troubling questions lingered. Why was there a brick in the bedroom? Why did Tom have a baseball bat? The brick was never explained. But the bat? Tom had an answer. He said he packed it as a gift for his grandson Jack, alongside a tennis racket. He didn't hand it over that night, he said, because Jack got home late and had already gone to bed. He planned to give it to him the next morning. When Tom took the stand, he explained that he and his wife Sharon had traveled to North Carolina just for the weekend. just a quiet family visit. He said Jason was warm, polite, sociable. There'd been no sign of tension, but the court heard more. Before marrying Molly, Jason had wired money to the US to buy the Davidson County home outright. No mortgage. He sent extra funds for furniture. One transfer stood out, $49,073, labeled for the marriage. It went directly to Tom. When asked in court if he hated Jason, Tom said no. He denied ever using that word. But he did admit something else. He didn't like him. And he had criticized Jason in private conversations. Whatever peace that weekend was meant to bring shattered with a single scream. Tom and Sharon had gone to bed. Their room was just below the bathroom that connected to Jason and Molly's bedroom. In the dead of night, Tom said he heard raised voices, then a woman's scream. He jumped out of bed, grabbed the baseball bat he had packed, ran upstairs. He flung open the bedroom door, and what he said he saw would haunt him forever. Jason and Molly were standing face to face. Jason's hands, Tom said, were locked around Molly's neck. Tom shut the door behind him. He never explained why. He said Jason pulled Molly into a tight chokehold, wrapping his arm around her neck, dragging her toward the bathroom. Tom begged him to stop. Jason, he said, looked back and told him he was going to kill her. Tom said that's when he raised the bat and swung straight at Jason's head. But Jason didn't go down. According to Tom, the blow did nothing. Molly was still limp in Jason's arms, so he kept swinging. Desperate, panicked, Tom claimed he struck Jason again and again, trying to make him release Molly, trying to stop what he believed was moments from becoming murder. Tom said the struggle didn't end there. Jason dragged Molly into the bathroom. Tom followed. Jason couldn't close the door all the way. Tom was blocking it. That gave Tom a chance. He struck again with the bat, but Jason didn't let go. He backed into the bedroom, still choking Molly. All three of them in the same room now. Tom swung again. Jason grabbed the bat. Molly broke free. A fight over the weapon broke out. Tom said Jason shoved him across the bed. He hit the floor face first, winded, dazed. Then he heard Molly scream, "Don't hurt my dad." He looked up. Jason was holding the bat now, standing in front of him. Tom said he looked like an athlete, braced, ready between him and Molly. Tom lunged. Molly, frantic, picked up a brick landscaping paver from her nightstand. She struck Jason with it. Tom said he managed to wrestle the bat back, and with that, he hit Jason again, and again, until Jason fell. Jason didn't get back up. Molly never testified. She never told her story in court, but something came to light that raised more suspicion. Jason had a life insurance policy. The sole beneficiary, Molly. In the end, the jury didn't believe it was self-defense. Tom and Molly Martins were both found guilty of second-degree murder. They were sentenced to 20 to 25 years each in North Carolina State Prison, but the case didn't end there. They appealed, arguing that key evidence had been left out. Among it, interviews with Jason's children, Jack and Sarah. By the time of the trial, the children were back in Ireland, out of reach. They couldn't be subpoenaed. Their voices, the defense claimed, could have changed everything, but the jury never heard them. A second legal battle simmered beneath the first, a fight over whose voices were allowed in. Tom and Molly asked the court to let the jury hear what Jack and Sarah had said right after their father died. These weren't offhand comments. They were official interviews, recorded at the time. The defense said these were crucial, a glimpse inside the home, proof that Molly was the one under threat. The judge disagreed. The interviews were ruled inadmissible. The jury never saw them. Tom and Molly weren't done. They appealed, took it to a higher court. They argued that the children's words mattered, that their statements supported Molly's claim she had been abused. There was a problem. Molly had never filed a report, never shown injuries, never taken the stand. Without the children's interviews, the defense was running on fumes. They pointed to two recordings, one done the day after Jason's death, another after his funeral. Both featured Jack and Sarah. At that time, they were living with Molly's brother. They allegedly told a social worker that Jason had a bad temper, that he got mad a lot, that he shouted at Molly, that he pulled her hair and smacked her in the face. The defense argued this was more than memory. It was context, and it supported Molly's story. But those interviews never reached the jury. 4 days after Jason's death, the children were taken to the Dragonfly House Children's Advocacy Center. There, forensic interviews were conducted. 2 detectives watched, Mark Hanna and Nathan Riggs. These weren't casual chats. The detectives came prepared. They wanted answers. Was Jason violent? Was Jack afraid? What was the brick doing in the bedroom? Did Molly sleep with Sarah? Was Jason planning a trip to Ireland?
The kids described a tense home, a dad who could lose his temper, over bills, over lights left on. They spoke of him hurting Molly. Sarah recalled having nightmares. She'd go to Molly for comfort, but if Jason got woken up, he'd get very angry. And the brick, the children said it was part of a painting project, brought inside when it rained, left on Molly's desk. To the defense, these interviews were gold, but soon that gold turned to dust, because years later, in a stunning twist, Jack and Sarah took it all back. They told prosecutors they'd been coached, pressured. They said the things they told social workers weren't true. They said Molly made them lie. She was the one who had been abusive. The defense's strongest card was now worthless. At sentencing, the defense tried to shift focus. They showed photos, played recordings. A family dynamics expert took the stand, said Molly's fear of losing the children drove her actions. Not hatred, not malice. The judge acknowledged some truth. Molly had once played a caring role. Tom had lived a life of good character. Others called him a devoted family man. Then came the plea deal. On 30 October 2023, Tom and Molly pleaded guilty, not to murder, but to manslaughter. Their sentences were adjusted to 51 to 74 months. Because of time served, they were both released on 6 June 2024. And now, with the case officially closed, we're left with fragments. A father dead, two families torn apart, children left to carry the weight, and a courtroom echo that still hasn't faded. Tom and Molly say it was self-defense. Some believe them, others never will. But one thing's certain, what happened in that bedroom on an August night didn't just end a life, it shattered everything around it. And for those left behind, the real verdict may never come. If you've watched this far, kindly support our channel by commenting, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real stories daily, and we'll see you next time. There's always another case to be unveiled. Remember,